it was in the prime of like Let Your Backbone Slide mania. And so like the entire church erupted. I think even the priest got his autograph.
Hi everyone, I'm iskwē and welcome back to the Chesterfield, where Canadian artists talk about their favorite Canadian art. This week, I'll be talking about Canadian hip-hop with Diana Reyes, aka Fly Lady Di. Now, Diana is a DJ, a dancer, and a visual artist who grew up in Markham, Ontario, and followed her dreams to work in New York City. She's danced in major pop music videos, incorporates traditional Filipino dance with contemporary choreography, and if you're lucky, you'll catch her spinning at some of Toronto's best block parties. Today, we're going to discuss all that, plus her pick for Canadian classic, the groundbreaking Let Your Backbone Slide by Maestro Fresh-Wes. 1, 2, 3.
This jam is amplified, so just glide. And let your backbone slide.
But first, a reminder that the Chesterfield is produced by Friends of Canadian Broadcasting. Friends is a non-profit organization powered completely by individual donors like you. Please check out the links in the video description to get to learn more about their work, and if you can, to get involved. And without further ado, please welcome Diana Reyes, aka Fly Lady Di. Well, welcome to the show, Diana, aka Fly Lady Di. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, iskwē. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Welcome to the Chesterfield. Thank you for joining us. Could you please tell me and us who and what your selection for your Canadian inspiration is?
So my selection for Canadian inspiration is Maestro Fresh-Wes and his hit song, Let Your Backbone Slide. I believe it was released in 1989, a long time ago.
Do you remember where you were when you first heard the song?
I was probably in my living room where I was glued to the TV with my sister, and like I think I still have the recording of like, you know, when you like run to the TV and like record it on your cassette.
Yeah.
And I think I have like there's a little part of it where I'm like telling my mom to shh because
you're like, stop, Mom.
Yeah. I was like, Mom. So I think that cassette tape still exists somewhere, but no, it definitely.
Were you saying shush?
Yeah, you could hear it. No, but it probably had to be in the living room. My sister and I just freaking out, like, what is this song? We have to like do it again and again.
Yeah.
And again.
How did the song influence you?
Being born and raised in Scarborough and Markham, and like watching Canadian television and American television, I never had like someone to look up to that looked like me on TV or in the media. The only person was Tia Carrere, who I believe was born in the Philippines and assumes like a Filipino likeness, but she never like proudly said that she was Filipino, which always was kind of like a diss to my sister and I, because we were like glued in front of the television. And so anyways, it was just really like disheartening for someone to look like us and not claim to be Filipino. So, but when the song, Let Your Backbone Slide came out, I think it was like 89, it was such a massive hit song, and it was at a time like so unlike now where Toronto music is so on the map and people don't even know that like maybe like 7 out of 10 top 10 artists right now are from Toronto or the Toronto area. And this was a time like late 80s, early 90s when New York and LA, like in terms of hip hop at least, prevailed when it came to being popular and being even just like on the map. Yeah. And so, Toronto had always been the underdog. We'd always been overshadowed by New York, LA, Chicago, any like other urban city in North America other than where we were. So when Let Your Backbone Slide came out by Maestro Fresh-Wes, everyone kind of went nuts, and it didn't even matter if America accepted it, because, you know, growing up in Toronto, like if the United States accepted something of Canada's, then it was cool for us to like it too. Right. But when that song came out, it didn't matter anymore. Like, it didn't matter if they liked it or not. Like, it was our song. Like, it was something that we could claim as our own. And then I found out, like, it was my, because I grew up Catholic in Markham, and so it was my first, what was it called? Reconciliation, which is like the first time you go to confession.
Okay.
This big ceremony when you're like like 8 years old, and Maestro Fresh-Wes was there. It was like in his, it was in the prime of like Let Your Backbone Slide mania. And so like the entire church erupted. I think even the priest got his autograph.
I mean, I grew up in Winnipeg, so for me, I felt even more separated from any type of celebrity and sort of any type of creative field as a career. So hearing this, it's nice to hear that experience was like, you know, tangible for you. Like, because to me, and I don't know if this was a similar sentiment, but it sounds like it could have been, that the idea of people who are successful, we didn't have that access, right? So with Maestro being the first hip hop artist to cross over, or whatever the term would be, right? Like he sat on the charts and was the top grossing hip hop artist in Canada for years and years and years, right? Like this is a huge, huge achievement. So to have that connection to it, that's awesome.
So it was just this symbol of pride from being from Toronto, and specifically being from where I'm from, in Toronto. And I think it was also a symbol that it was possible to be successful coming from where we were from.
How did that feel?
Oh man, it was huge because, well, it was him and Mishi Me.
Yep.
And it was like, yeah, they were like a beam of possibility for any of that to happen to us. But again, like no one really who looked like me, but still, you know, someone of color who I could definitely look to as a role model, definitely look to as like an inspiration.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think him just having that bravado, him having that confidence in himself, despite, you know, being from here and being totally the underdog forever, and never really like having a voice that preceded him in hip hop or anything like it. You know, like it was such a loud presence in that whole scene at the time. And so it was so admirable to watch someone shine so brightly, with however much confidence he had, which was a lot. And till this day, I mean, like when we play this song in the house, like me and my roommate, we just like dance around to it. It's like still a hit song. Whenever anyone drops the song, it's always like a crazy moment. And so, yeah, it's always going to be an inspiration. It's always going to be kind of a theme song for like being a kid growing up in Toronto.
I mean, it makes sense that you guys would still, you know, when it comes on, still treat it in that way, because it was quite literally the largest, what is it here? The best-selling Canadian hip-hop single for 19 years.
Wow.
Can you even imagine?
I can definitely imagine.
So tell me about yourself a bit. When you ventured, so you spent some time, I mean, clearly you've spent some time in Canada, but you also spent some time in the US. What do you feel were some of the differences between the two scenes, like the dance scene in Toronto, really, or Canada, wherever you might have danced here, versus New York?
Yeah, my dancing had always been based here in Toronto, but there's huge stark difference. I think even now, I would say, but I'd say the ultimate difference would be like the intensity. In New York, they have this rule called practice till you puke, which is very literal. Like you're literally practicing until you can't no more. Like you physically can't move. And that's kind of the rule. And that's really how you get better. For me personally, that's how I got better. That's how I sort of built a name for myself, was like really just like unrelenting intensity when it came to practice and like daily grind. And here it's sort of like you have separate lives. You have like your work life, your family life, and then you have your dance. So it's like in New York, there's no separation. Like dance is your life. Like that's all you do. And here it's sort of like a hobby. It's sort of something people do on the side, or like within a couple of hours in the day. But in New York, it's a culture.
Do you feel that Canada might have sort of a style of dance that could be quintessentially Canadian, in the same way that, like, when we think of New York and you think of all of these elements like whacking and voguing and pop and lock-in and all of these elements that become kind of classified under hip hop, that's very quintessentially New York. It comes with a story. Do you feel like we have that here?
Well, there's a lot of indigenous dances here, like the hoops. Forgive me, I don't know the proper names, but I've seen so many tremendous performances by indigenous artists here. And if there were any Canadian dance, it would be that for me. Now, you have brought in cultural elements to your style of dance as well, right? This is correct? Definitely something that I've taken on for myself because I was born in Canada. I was raised in Canada. I didn't go to the Philippines till I was 32, which is like a long time by any stretch to like visit a motherland, like where their parents are from. Yeah. And so the Philippines had always been this sort of myth. But even prior to going to the Philippines, I had like performed Filipino folk dance and I'd really not known anything about it prior. Yeah. And so now I'm like continuing this investigation of Philippine folk dance and it's incredible. I love to hear that you're able to explore that and get your feet into it and reconnect to your home, right? Not that Canada's not your home, but the other home. The motherland. Motherland. Yeah, I always, because like I'm developing my solo show Third World, and a lot of it has to do with the concept of home because I never considered that my home. I didn't go there. How can you consider something your home that you've never been to? You know, and yeah. But even being Canadian didn't feel like home to me because I got called so many racial slurs growing up, and even like in my adult life, and. So it's like, how do you know where you belong? How do you know where's home for you? So it's like home is like what you build for yourself within. Yeah. As it's like, if the external world is telling you you don't belong, even in the Philippines, I feel like I don't belong there because A, I'm Canadian, B, I'm darker, which they don't like. They don't like when you're like darker skinned. And yeah, so it's so hard to feel like I belong anywhere. Right. And like, definitely felt like I belonged in New York. I still feel like that way. But at the same time, I'm not from New York. And so that's a totally different ball of wax. It's like I'm still a foreigner in New York, you know, even though they love me and I love them, I'm still not of them, you know, kind of thing. So it's like, yeah, I've realized that it's really what you build within yourself to call home. Absolutely. I would 100% agree with it. And I love that you bring that up because you know, the context of this show is to talk about Canadian art forms and influences with Canadian artists. And the concept of Canada is a tricky thing to associate to for a lot of people, right? Like I know a lot of Indigenous folks who will not refer to themselves as Canadian. They'll refer to themselves solely as Indigenous. And, you know, so it brings up that very important point of, you know, there is no collective experience when it comes to this country. It's a very diverse pool of people that live here. We come from all kinds of different areas of the globe, and that's a part of the diversity of this place, which I feel like leads to a lot of the or influences, I should say, a lot of how we develop, you know, in the arts as an example. And to hear you speak about all of these different pieces and how, you know, how you've pulled from your motherland, but how you pulled from Toronto and how you pulled from New York. It's such an interesting and rich story that you've shared. So thank you very much for that. That's awesome. Thank you. And I'm glad these conversations are being had because it's really important. I'm so proud to be Canadian. Yep. And I'm so proud to be from here, be a product of here. And I think it's so important for like stories like mine to be shared because my experience is so like so many others who were born here of immigrant parents and who grew up here. And sort of like, you know, it's all about giving ourselves a chance to express our stories as Canadians because for so long, we're not viewed as Canadians, right? But we are, like, through and through. We're born here, raised here. Like, I would rather eat pancakes than longanisa and rice. I mean, solid choice pancakes pretty much top my list over everything, no matter what. Maple syrup and female bacon. Okay.
There you go. There you go.